The rain drummed softly against the tin roof of the Golden Calabash Café, that cozy little spot tucked at the corner of a quiet street where laughter and the scent of spiced tea mingled with the gentle hum of conversation. Behind the counter stood Amara, a kind-hearted waitress whose warm smile had been lighting up this cafe for nearly 8 years. At 35, she'd learned to find peace in simple things: the joy of remembering a regular customer's order, the laughter of a child tasting sweet mandazi for the first time, or the way the evening light filtered through the cafe's large windows, painting everything gold. But tonight felt different. Her hands trembled slightly as she refilled cups, her eyes darting toward the door each time the wind chime jingled. She'd been dreading this moment for weeks, the day she knew would come when he would find her again. And then, as thunder rolled in the distance, she saw that familiar, unwelcome silhouette fill the doorway. Her breath caught, her heart pounded like a drum. For years, the Golden Calabash had been Amara's refuge, a place where she could pour her heart into serving others while slowly healing from the wounds no one else could see. The regulars had become like family. Old Baba Musa with his daily crossword puzzle, Aisha, the young mother who came every Saturday with her twin boys, the retired teachers who gathered every Friday to debate novels over plates of jollof rice and plantains. Amara moved through her routine with quiet grace, her hair neatly wrapped in a colorful scarf, her crisp uniform spotless despite the long day. She took pride in her work, and the dignity of honest labor, and in the community she'd built around this little cafe. Even the cafe's owner, Mama Lillian, often said Amara had a gift, that she made everyone who entered feel they belonged, no matter who they were. But that gift felt fragile tonight, because 3 months ago, Amara had done the unthinkable. She'd left Derrick, the man who'd once made her believe in forever, but who'd turned her world into something she barely survived. The bruises had faded, but the fear still lived deep in her chest like a trapped bird, fluttering whenever she heard heavy footsteps or angry voices. When she moved to this quiet town, she'd hoped for a new beginning. A tiny apartment above a bakery, the scent of fresh bread each dawn making her feel safe again. For a while it worked. She'd started to laugh again, to breathe, to believe she might deserve peace. And then there was Kamal. He always sat in the corner booth, tall, calm, with kind eyes that softened whenever he looked at her. He was in his early 40s, well-dressed but never arrogant, and his gentle manners had made him something of a mystery among the cafe regulars. He often came in alone, reading an old novel as he sipped his coffee, leaving generous tips and quiet encouragement in his wake. Tonight, Kamal was there again, a faint smile on his face as he watched the rain trail down the glass. Something about his presence always steadied her heartbeat, until the bell above the door chimed again. And he walked in. Derrick. He looked exactly the same. Tall, broad-shouldered, his shirt clinging to him from the rain, and that dangerous glint in his eyes that once made her feel special, and now made her blood run cold. After months of hiding, changing numbers, deleting social media, keeping to herself, he'd found her, here, in the one place that had felt like home. "Found you," he said, his voice smooth and low, carrying across the cafe like an old ghost. He slid onto a stool at the counter, flashing that same smile that used to melt her. Her hands shook as she set down the pot, her eyes darting toward the door each time the wind chime jingled. She'd been dreading this moment for weeks, the day she knew would come when he would find her again. After months of hiding, changing numbers, deleting social media, keeping to herself, he'd found her, here, in the one place that had felt like home. "Found you," he said, his voice smooth and low, carrying across the cafe like an old ghost. He slid onto a stool at the counter, flashing that same smile that used to melt her. Her hands shook as she set down the pot, her eyes darting toward the door. "What do you want, Derrick?" she whispered, praying the tremor in her voice didn't give her away. He chuckled softly, leaning forward. "What do I want? I want to talk to my woman. Is that so wrong? You're not my woman anymore. Oh, sweetheart. His tone dropped to that quiet, dangerous note she knew too well. You don't get to decide that. Not after everything I've done for you. You think you can run away to some forgotten town and play pretend? At the nearby table, Baba Musa glanced over, sensing the tension. Amara forced a shaky smile and tried to look calm, but the air felt heavy with dread. Please, just go, she whispered. But Derrick's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist across the counter, his grip tight, possessive. We need to talk, he hissed. You're coming home with me. From the corner, Kamal looked up sharply, eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. His book lay forgotten. Amara's gaze flickered to his, desperate, and in that single glance, she silently begged for help. Derrick followed her eyes, his jaw tightening. Friend of yours? He asked, voice dark. Kamal rose slowly from his seat, calm but commanding. She's everyone's friend here, he said evenly, and you're making her uncomfortable. Derrick turned to face him, sizing him up. I don't think this concerns you. It does, Kamal said quietly, because she asked you to leave. The cafe had gone silent. Even Mama Lillian had paused mid-step behind the counter. Derrick's smile turned sharp, his grip on Amara's wrist tightening until she winced. I think you should mind your business, my friend. Kamal's eyes hardened. Her safety is my business. And in that single moment, between fear and defiance, something inside Amara shifted.
Derrick's grip on Amara's wrist tightened, his knuckles whitening. The cafe was silent except for the steady drumming of rain outside. You've had your fun, he said coldly. Now you're coming home. I don't have time for your games. Amara tried to pull free, her pulse pounding. Let me go, Derrick. Please, you're hurting me. Stop pretending to be the victim, he sneered. You and I both know you can't survive without me. But before he could drag her closer, Kamal stepped forward, placing himself between them with quiet authority. He wasn't loud or aggressive. He didn't need to be. His presence alone made Derrick pause. She said let go, Kamal repeated, his tone calm but unyielding. That should be enough. Derrick turned, sizing him up. And who are you? Her new man? Kamal's eyes didn't waver. Just someone who respects her right to feel safe. The cafe's customers sat frozen. Even the clinking of cups had stopped. Mama Lillian stood near the doorway, her expression tight with worry. Derrick gave a sharp laugh, the kind that sent a chill through Amara's bones. I see what's happening here. Rich city man playing hero in a small-town cafe. Tell me, what's your plan? Call the police? You think they'll come running for her? Amara's breath caught, because she knew that he wasn't entirely wrong. She had tried before. No one had listened. But Kamal only tilted his head slightly, his gaze steady. Maybe they won't, he said softly. But I'm standing right here, and you're not taking her anywhere. Derrick's patience snapped. With a snarl, he yanked Amara forward so hard that the coffee pot tipped, spilling dark liquid across the counter. She gasped, stumbling into Kamal's arm. For a heartbeat, everything slowed. The rain outside, the whispers, the tension that thickened like smoke. Then, Amara did something she never thought she could. She pulled free. She twisted out of Derrick's grasp and stumbled into Kamal's booth, clutching the edge of the table, her whole body shaking. For once, she didn't freeze. She didn't shrink back. She moved. Derrick's face darkened, rage flashing in his eyes. You think hiding behind him will save you? Kamal stepped in front of her, shielding her completely. His voice was low and even. I think you should leave, Derrick. Derrick's jaw clenched, his nostrils flaring. You've made a mistake, both of you. You have no idea who I am. Maybe not, Kamal said, but I know exactly what kind of man grabs a woman who's begging to be left alone. The quiet power in his words made even the air seem to hold still. Derrick stared at him for a long, dangerous second, then finally stepped back, fury smoldering behind his eyes. This isn't over, he hissed. His gaze cut to Amara, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I know where you work now.
I know where you live." And with that, he turned and strode out into the rain. The door closed behind him, and for a moment no one moved. The cafe felt heavy with silence. A silence thick with fear, relief, and disbelief all tangled together. Mama Lillian was the first to move. She hurried over with a cloth and a bowl of ice. "My child," she said softly, pressing the ice to Amara's wrist. "Are you hurt?" Amara shook her head, but her voice trembled. "I'm fine, just shaken." Kamal slid into a booth across from her, his expression calm but his eyes filled with concern. "You're not fine," he said quietly. "That man is dangerous." He'll looked down at her wrist, where his fingerprints were already darkening her skin. "I don't understand. He's connected. His family has money, power. I tried to report him once. The police didn't even take notes. They made it sound like I was the problem." Kamal's expression changed slightly. Not surprise, but recognition. A flicker of something deeper. "What do you mean, connected?" he asked quietly. "His father owns several big businesses where I used to live," Amara whispered. "They all know him. He never faces consequences for anything. That's why I ran." Kamal was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady. Then he said something that made her heart stumble. "Amara," he said, gently, "there's something I should tell you. My full name is Kamal Adewale." She blinked. The name was familiar. It carried weight. Adewale Enterprises was one of the largest investment firms on the continent. She had seen his face on news features before. Younger looking then, in a navy suit, shaking hands with presidents and CEOs. She stared at him, stunned. "You're that Kamal Adewale?" He smiled faintly. "The same. But here, I'm just Kamal, a man who comes for tea and peace of mind." Her mind swirled. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He shrugged lightly. "Money doesn't define who I am, but right now, it might help define how I can protect you." Mama Lillian raised an eyebrow from nearby and muttering, "God really sends angels in disguise." Kamal stepped forward, his tone gentle but firm. "Listen, Amara, I'm not going to let him hurt you again. I have people who can handle this the right way. Quietly, but effectively." She hesitated, torn between fear and relief. "You don't have to. I want to," he said softly, "because no one deserves to live in fear." For the first time in months, Amara felt something fragile and bright flicker inside her. Hope. Kamal stood, slipped a card on the table, and said quietly, "Call me if he shows up again, anytime, day or night." As he walked out into the rain, she watched him go, her heart still trembling, not from fear this time, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. And though the night was far from over, the storm outside didn't seem quite as cold anymore.
3 weeks passed, and though the town still whispered about that stormy night at the Golden Calabash Café, life had begun to settle into something almost peaceful again. The bruises on Amara's wrist had faded, but more importantly, the tightness in her chest, that constant flutter of fear, had begun to ease. Derrick hadn't returned, and for the first time in months, she could breathe without feeling like someone was watching her from the shadows. That was no accident. Kamal had quietly stepped in after that night. She didn't know the details, but she'd seen the results. A restraining order delivered within days, police officers suddenly taking her case seriously, and whispers about Derrick's family facing investigations for past incidents. Powerful men didn't scare Kamal Adewale. He was one of them, but he was the rare kind who used his power differently. He still came to the cafe, always in that same corner booth, with his open book and quiet smile, but now he stayed longer. Sometimes he worked from his laptop while Amara moved through her shifts, occasionally glancing up to meet her eyes. Their conversations, once polite and casual, had grown deeper. He asked about her dreams, about the things she'd given up along the way, and the things she still hoped for. She told him how she'd once wanted to study counseling, to help women who'd been through what she had, but life had a way of burying dreams under survival. Maybe it's time to dig them up again. he'd said one evening, his tone light but meaningful. She laughed softly. Easier said than done. Not if you have help. And she didn't know how to respond to that, to a man who didn't try to save her with promises, but with possibility. Mama Lillian had noticed too. She teased one afternoon as Amara wiped down the counter. That man's coffee is getting stronger every week. Must be your company adding flavor. Mama, please, Amara said, blushing. He's just kind. Kai, my dear, Mama Lillian chuckled, wagging her finger. There's kindness, and then there's the kind that comes with extra cream. Amara couldn't help but laugh, the sound light and genuine, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in a long time. But laughter wasn't the only thing returning. So was purpose. Kamal had arranged for the Golden Calabash to get a new security system, cameras, lights, and a panic button by the counter. He'd also made sure the cafe had more staff, so Amara never had to work alone. And when she tried to protest, he only said, "Call it an investment in peace of mind." One evening, after closing, Kamal stayed behind as the rain capped against the windows. The same rain that once carried fear but now sounded almost comforting. He said, I've been thinking about expanding my foundation's work. Maybe it's time we focused more on supporting women who faced what you have, giving them jobs, shelter, a way to start again." Amara paused mid-wipe, her cloth still in hand. "That's a beautiful idea." He looked at her, his expression soft. "I'd like you to help lead it, if you're willing." She stared at him, stunned. "Me? But You're exactly the right person," he said gently, "because you understand what it means to rebuild from nothing. You know the courage it takes to start over." For a long moment, she couldn't speak. She'd been so used to surviving that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Her throat tightened, tears prickling at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," he said simply. And she did. That night, as she walked home beneath the streetlights, her umbrella open against the drizzle, she felt lighter, like the rain wasn't just washing the streets clean, but her past too. For the first time in a very long while, Amara wasn't running from something, she was walking toward something new. The morning sun slipped through the cafe's wide windows, bathing the golden calabash in soft gold. It was market day, and laughter spilled in from the street, the sounds of a town alive, the way Amara had always loved it. 3 months had passed since the night Derrick had walked into her life for the last time. He hadn't returned. Word around town said his father's empire was crumbling under investigations. People whispered about old wrongs resurfacing, about other women who had finally found the courage to speak. Amara didn't celebrate his downfall. She simply exhaled in quiet relief. Justice didn't erase the past, but it had a way of loosening its grip. She'd stayed at the cafe, even when Kamal offered her other jobs. "This place gave me back my life," she'd said with a smile. "I'm not ready to leave it yet." But now her days held new meaning. She spent her mornings at the cafe and her evenings helping organize the Rising Hearts Foundation, Kamal's new initiative to support survivors of domestic abuse. She'd helped design the program herself. Shelters, vocational training, counseling centers, in small towns where silence had too often been the only response to suffering. It wasn't just work to her, it was healing. One quiet evening, the cafe was almost empty, except for the low hum of the radio and the faint smell of roasted coffee beans. Mama Lillian wiped down the counter with her usual cheerful energy. "He's waiting for you," she said, nodding toward the corner booth with a teasing grin. Amara turned, smiling softly. Kamal sat in his usual place, dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, reading a newspaper. When he looked up, that familiar, calm warmth filled the space between them. "Evening," she said, walking over. "Evening," he replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I was starting to think you were avoiding me." "Just finishing up," she said lightly. "Some of us actually work for a living, you know." He chuckled. Touché. Amara poured him a cup of coffee, the steam rising between them. For a moment they sat in companionable silence, watching the rain start again outside, soft, steady, and familiar. You know, he said after a while, I was reading your foundation report this morning. Oh? He nodded. You've done something remarkable, Amara. You've turned pain into purpose. That's rare. Her gaze lowered, her voice soft. You gave me the chance. I gave you the tools, he said gently. You built the house. The words lingered between them, tender and true. She smiled, a real, quiet smile that reached her eyes. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just a kind stranger with good taste in novels. And now? Now, she said, her voice warm, I think maybe you were sent to remind me that not all storms destroy. Some bring rain that helps things grow. Kamal looked at her for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Understanding, admiration, a promise not made in words, but in the quiet way he reached across the table and took her hand. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, new, alive. As Amara stepped out later that night, locking up the cafe behind her, she looked up at the sky. The clouds were parting, revealing stars scattered across the darkness like tiny lamps of hope. She walked home under their light. No longer the woman who ran from her past, but the one who had faced it, healed from it, and turned it into something that could heal others. And in that quiet, she finally understood. Sometimes, life gives you storms, not to drown you, but to teach you how to dance in the rain.